Hi, and welcome to IELTS Talk Tips, episode 4. I'm Glenn. Thank you for coming back and seeing me again. And you may see that somebody has stolen my black cup. I don't mind the fact that they've given me a red cup. In fact, it's quite shiny and big, but it has something on the front of it called the Eiffel Tower. I'm not a fan of the Eiffel Tower. In fact, I call it the Awful Tower. Awful is an English word meaning, well, you can work it out for yourself. But anyway, Eiffel and awful are two entirely different ideas about this great French emblem. Okay, in this particular episode, we are going to be talking about expanding your answers. And as you may remember in an earlier episode, I said to you that I don't really like to use the word answer because when students hear the word answer, they tend to get all upset and uptight. Psychologically, they think that there must be some type of right answer or wrong answer or right way of answering the question to keep all of society happy. And if they don't keep the person who is listening happy or the IELTS examiner happy, their grade will somehow be much lower. But really, IELTS doesn't work that way. There's no right or wrong answer. You can really express your opinion. And in that way, I don't like to use the word answer. I usually say stories because many times the answers are giving your opinion and they are in fact your stories about or your feelings about something. So although this episode is called Expanding Your Answers, I could also say expanding your stories. Now, you might think, this is probably one of the hardest things you could ever come across in any type of educational environment, whether it's just learning a language or making some presentation or indeed doing this IELTS test. How do you make your stories or your answers longer when you've got nothing to say? And I guess that's the main point. Have you really got nothing to say? Because many times, and I've come across this thousands of times when training people for IELTS, students that think that they have nothing to say actually have a lot to say, but they just need to think in a different way, think in a different direction. It almost feels like a different direction. So one of the best ways to expand your stories or expand your answers for IELTS or almost any type of presentation is to do the famous journalism formula. We could even say journalistic formula of 5 W's and 1 H. Who, what, when, where, why, and how. Now, that might sound very remedial or primary for some of you who have heard this formula before. And you might think, well, okay, time to switch off, go to the next video. But don't do that. Stay with me because there are ways of using this formula that many people don't try or don't know about. And that is to try to dig deep into the formula. For example, in any type of situation, there can be many different types of when answers. When is about what time of the day, what season it was, when, AM, PM, morning, afternoon, evening. Many people don't dig down to really find the answers. For example, you might say, well, it was today. But of course, you can speak for quite a few more seconds if you say, I got up at 9 o'clock this morning to meet a great day. You've actually added a few more seconds to your story or your answer just by talking about whether it was AM or PM and mentioning the time, not just the day, that it was Sunday or something like that. So I have here, as usual, one of my handouts, and I will be putting it on the screen for you very soon. Let's look at a typical situation. This is not really an IELTS question. It's kind of like an IELTS training question. It is, what did you do in the weekend? And many people might give a very simple answer. They might say, I went sock shopping, or I went socking for shops? I went shopping for socks. But we can actually extend something very boring like that into quite a lengthy answer. Actually, in some ways, the answer may still be a bit boring, but it will be very interesting because you made something very boring into a lengthy answer. The fact that you can change something that's boring into a lengthy story is kind of interesting. Okay, let's look at how we may answer this in a way that could get you stuck or create problems for you in IELTS. What did you do in the weekend? I went sock shopping. Well, sorry, this is not a 2-minute IELTS answer. You need to add a lot more information. So ask yourself, what? What was it? Who? Who I was with. When? When did I go, or when was it? Why? Why did I go, or why did I choose it? You can see there's a couple of different why directions you can go there. You think about that. How? How did I go, or how did I play it? I bet you've never thought of that one before. It's probably a new one for you. Yeah. How did I go, or how did I play it? And where? Where did I go, or where was it? Now let's look at our little story about sock shopping. And when I created this worksheet probably about 3 or 4 years ago, I tried to think of the most boring situation that anybody could be in as a weekend experience, something which many people would find very difficult to talk about for 2 minutes. And I could not think of anything more boring than having to take a special trip, as sometimes happens in life, to get something very basic like new socks, an upgrade on your socks, because for some reason you've been delaying it and you can't possibly wear your only remaining 2 pairs of socks anymore. Okay, so how would we write this down? Possible answers. What? Well, you went shopping. Who? Who did you go with? You went with friends, or maybe a friend. When? It was 9:30 a.m. on Saturday. Why? Well, you know you need to buy new socks. How? By bus, or maybe by foot, or maybe by taxi, whatever. And where? Walmart. I think many of you have heard of Walmart. It's a big American kind of very economical department variety store that many Americans shop at. But even if you haven't, it doesn't matter. Let's just say it's a big, well-known chain of stores in America, and also they have stores throughout China. Now let's take a look at how we might put this into a 2-minute story. As I kind of said, although a bit roughly before, a very, very boring 2-minute story, but the fact that you can tell a 2-minute story about sock shopping actually makes the experience quite interesting. So let's begin. I had a good time shopping over the past weekend. I've been wearing the same socks for over 2 years, so I really needed to go out and find some good new socks. My friend told me that Walmart has some good socks at a reasonable price, so at 9:30 on Saturday, I went sock shopping. I took the bus to Walmart and asked my good friend Paul to go with me. We got to the city centre at about 10:15 and then made our way to Walmart. It was very crowded, but I found 2 pairs of brown socks that I really like and 5 black that are a good quality for summer and winter use. Overall, it was a successful shopping trip, and now I know that whenever I want to go sock shopping, once every 5 years, I can grab my very enthusiastic, happy friend Paul to go with me, and the story continues and continues and continues. Kind of funny, right? But the interesting thing about this, as I was saying at the beginning of the segment, your story doesn't need to be exciting. Your story doesn't need to be correct, what you may perceive as correct or incorrect. Your story doesn't need to keep the IELTS examiner happy. The only thing they care about is if you are using an interesting range of vocabulary, good spoken grammar, and good pronunciation. I even have another little example about this, which is kind of weird and maybe a bit not so tasteful, but it's a really great way to really show you, or to put deeply into your mind, just how nobody cares about the content of your story. A well-known IELTS question, which the examiners recycle every 3 or 4 years, is describe an activity that elderly people do to keep fit and healthy. Sometimes they will vary that question and say, describe an activity that elderly people in your country do to keep fit and healthy. Now, you could give a really crazy answer and say something like, well, frankly, I don't really care about elderly people. I think that they should just die younger, and I think that most people in my country, elderly people, are too fat. They need to do more exercise. You don't need to be politically correct to say nice things. You only need to speak good English. vocabulary, spoken grammar, and pronunciation for 2 minutes to get the right type of grade, especially if it's a described question, which is part 2 of the speaking exam. Now, to practice this type of technique, or I could also describe it like this, to train in this particular method of IELTS preparation, it's best if you have an empty form or a template to write on. And the template can be very, very simple. Let's take a look at that now. Now, the template simply needs to be a bunch of columns. And you can see in column 1, what? Column 2, who, then when, then why, and then later we have how and where. You will notice that when I was giving these the 5 W's and 1 H formula, I said who, what, when, where, why, how. Who, what, when, where, why, how. But some people find it better when they create templates to write on that they just change these words around, because not every story will begin with a what part. Not every story will begin with a when part. And certainly almost no story will begin with a how. Imagine you're telling a story. You can't really begin with the how information. That usually comes later. Now, looking at our sock shopping example, column 1, went shopping. Who? Went with friends, John and Kate. When? 9:30 a.m. And also, the other when? Saturday. And maybe you can mention something about it, because after Saturday you might want to mention that it was a cold morning. Why? Well, socks. And also why again? Because all my socks are 2 years old. How? By bus. And where? Walmart. And what about Walmart? It was crowded. So you can see that you can tag some what questions onto the where section. Where? Walmart. What about Walmart? It was crowded. Now, surprisingly, when you practice this, you will be able to expand your answers. That's the whole name of today's episode. You will be very, very surprised about how something which you thought would be a very, very short story can expand to easily more than 3 or 4 minutes of talking. And that's the whole idea of this series, getting you a better grade in the IELTS test. See you next time. Okay?